It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you.
Hello, and welcome to Accelerate, another episode of Frontline Fridays with my very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Bridget, how are you today?
Andy, I am great. And Andy, may I just make a comment that I love your enthusiasm whenever you announce this show. I always listen and think, oh my God, this is so exciting. He's so excited about this. It gets me excited.
I am excited. Hopefully everybody that's listening is excited as well. And today in particular, we get to have one of our favorite things that we do from, I don't know, maybe monthly. I haven't really been tracking how often we do this, but talk about new books that we've been reading about sales and marketing, business, personal reading, whatever that's exciting us.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is.
So I guess I'll lead today.
Great.
So one new book I've read recently I really enjoyed, and I think for anybody who is in the business of presenting information and communicating with people, so hopefully sales people, marketing people, and it was a book called Draw to Win by Dan Roam, R-O-A-M, who wrote the book
Draw
to Win.
To Win. Okay.
Now Dan's New York Times bestseller with, I think, his book Back of the Napkin or something, but his whole thing's about how do you...
yeah. I know Back of the Napkin. Okay.
Yeah. So how do you use illustration, if you will, drawings, to more effectively communicate your message? And so he was also on the show a few weeks ago. For people listening to this, go back and listen to that episode in my conversation with him. But a great book because he really breaks down, okay, if you want to use drawings effectively, and his whole books, is stick figures. I mean, nothing really. It's not like he's using great art. He's basically like using stick figures and able to describe processes and situations and sort of abstract ideas so clearly, enhancing it using figures. And so he breaks it down into a sort of 6-step recipe about how to effectively do this. And I'm working on my newest book, and I'd love to have some illustrations in there. So I've been practicing my very simple drawing, because he gives you you're not talking about doing artwork. You're talking about doing drawing. So
are you going to do the illustrations for your book?
I'm going to try.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I'm going to try. I'm not committing that they're going to make the final cut.
Okay.
But I've done some already.
That's impressive in my mind.
But I just read another book from a...
May I make one comment on that before you go to the next book?
Sure.
I was out at a client actually in France 2 weeks ago. I have to remember where I was. And as I've mentioned before, Logs.io it's a very technical product, and it's log management analytics. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys that we met there, we were in a conference room, and he said, "Oh, come over to my office. I want to show you something." And Andy, he had this huge logo representation of his servers and firewalls and connectors and applications, and he had the whole thing laid out. So he didn't have stick figures like Dan did. He did this Lego world and he told us that on the side, he is a Lego consultant for business. And he works with companies to help them map out conflict, model and resolve conflict using Legos. Think about that one. Okay, that's not a book.
I love it.
But when you're talking about drawings, what immediately came to mind was this Lego world. And it's visualizing. It's
visualizing, right?
It's the same basic concept. Is how do we get it out of our head into something that is abstract into something that visually is just is a different. We just have a different relationship to it.
Yeah, and more compelling. And Dan Rome gives numerous examples about how in his own business, which he has a consulting firm that works for major enterprises, that their conversion rate on the proposals has gone up substantially because of the way they do their presentations and they present the material in their proposals using drawing, and then gives tips about hey, if you're presenting to a customer, what can you do to get them involved, right? He talks about this whole idea of starting a presentation at a whiteboard and then stopping and handing the pen to the customer, let them finish it, right? And then suddenly you're collaborating and co-creating value. And so for people looking for another tool that anybody can use, because he's very clear and gives very, very detailed instructions that really help simplify this idea of how you can become much more effective at drawing. Again, not becoming an artist, but drawing concepts. Yeah, really recommend you pick up that book and read it. It's very inspirational, and I've been using it in other things, but I mean, certainly looking at using my book as well. But yeah, very well done.
It sounds like a great book.
Yeah, so
I really enjoyed the back of the napkin, so I'll make sure to pick that one up too.
Okay, cool. So
and
what
I'll
have you
look
read?
forward to seeing your stick figures as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So what have you read recently?
Well, I read. I have to think about what's my. I've always got one sort of business book and one fiction that I've got going at the same time. The most recent that I read, sort of business book, was a book by a guy at Google called Search Inside Yourself, The Unexpected Path to Achieving Success, Happiness, and then he has in parentheses world peace. And it's a little bit, in one of our more recent episodes, we were talking about stress and how that affects sales and performance. And I try to balance the very sort of technical books that I read about sales process and structure, and with the ones that are really more the inside game, is what's happening internally, and how do we make sure that we've got conditions for success set up in our own little hardwired brains. And nothing in there he says is new. I mean, this is a class that he started at Google, and then has since open sourced it. But it's again, how do you reduce that stress internally? How do you have a position of like a resting point of abundance and calm, so that you can go and execute on those things that you need to execute on? So I really enjoyed the book.
Do you know the author?
Chade Meng Tan.
Okay. All right. And you said you're reading something fiction as well?
Yeah, I'm reading a book. I'll have to. I read on my Kindle, and so it doesn't have. The problem for me with reading on the Kindle is I don't have the book that I see every day. It's not sitting on my shelf, so I don't often remember the titles. But this one it's a book that is set in actually Jerusalem, and because I go back and forth to Israel. And it's just a book about some conflict that was in Jerusalem. I read a lot of nonfiction as well as fiction now about Israel, since I do a lot of going back and forth there.
Sure.
So it's just sort of I just started it, but nothing that I would recommend or not recommend yet. Okay.
All right. Okay, so my turn, huh? So another one I read recently that I've talked about, and the author has been a guest on the show. Well, actually, by the time this airs, his episode won't have aired yet. Okay. But I urge people to look forward to it. There's a book called Every Data: The Misinformation Hidden in the Little Data You Consume Every Day. The author's name is John H. Johnson. He's an economist. And a great book about how we just don't know how to use statistics and data. And
Oh God, yeah.
this is a pressing topic for sales because increasingly we have more and more data that's available to us about what's happening within our sales efforts, our marketing efforts. And the author's contention is, and I think that this is borne out by sort of the way we look at some of the metrics and data we use within sales, is that we're misusing it, because and one of his primary themes is that we have this confirmation bias that's working, that we look at the data and use it to suit and justify something we already believe to be true.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think we do that.
Oh, yeah. And on top of which, the other thing, perhaps even more pressing, if you will, as we look forward to how we're using data more effectively in selling, is he says, we confuse correlation with causation. And this is perhaps the biggest thing, right? We see a number and say, okay, well, something saying that this correlates to a higher open rate, let's say, of emails. But we tend to think that's, maybe it's a certain subject line, but we tend to think that that's the cause, where it correlates, but it's not the cause, right? So we're not really getting down to, we understand we have all these correlations in sales, but we have very little knowledge about what's actually causing the underlying cause of what makes something happen. And so the book sort of explores that at length, and I mean, not too long because it's a fairly short book, but quick read, real eye opener for anybody that's at all interested, as anybody in sales, again, especially managers that more and more are being presented data, get you to think more clearly about what it is you're really seeing.
Sounds like a great one. I always, if only I had more time. That's all I need, more time. And I would read constantly. I'd read and learn languages. Those would be my two things. So when I am rich and retired, you'll be able to find me in a library.
I'll hire you as my book reader.
All right. I would so do that. And I won't even charge much. I won't even charge much.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Because I enjoy it.
Yeah. All right. So do you have another one?
I always got another one, but one that I read recently was, I may have mentioned this before, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike.
I can't remember if we talked about that or not, but yeah. Others have mentioned it.
I love reading books from founders and CEOs because I love being in the startup space. That's my place to play. And this book, I think for me, just the overarching message is we look at Nike now, this big iconic brand, and it just seems like they've been successful and big and iconic for a long time. And when you go back to the origins and the guts of Phil Knight and the number of times that they were on the brink of bankruptcy or dissolution or not getting off the ground and the setbacks it's just a great story of perseverance and courage. And I just think it applies in these companies that we look at that when our expectation is that they just sort of went up and to the right from the beginning. Hell no, they went up, down, left, right, back, forward, almost gone, successful. And sales for us can also be similar. We have lots of moments when we feel like it's not going to happen. And just having this fortitude and resolution of spirit and just determination.
Resilience. And
resilience. Resilience is so key. And he was just really resilient and really interesting. It was, and just the ups and downs, the ins and outs. I just found very interesting and inspiring in a way. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, that goes on my list. Another one I've read, which I would recommend to, basically anybody in sales, is a book called The Science of Selling, written by a gentleman named David Hoffeld. And also have interviewed him, and his episode will be coming up shortly on the show. And he did a really good job of summarizing and sort of synthesizing a lot of the research that's been done about, the neuroscience of decision making and influence and behavioral economics and social psychology that we sort of referred to in past episodes. And sort of laying it out in a way that you can sort of follow. And it's just, and he's at the end puts together sort of his own, based on that, he sort of puts together his own methodology for doing, approaching customers, which is good. I mean, I thought the real strength of the book was that, the first half to 2/3 where he's really going through all this research. There's just lots of things to learn in there about, from academia about our customers, how they process information, how they are influenced, how they make decisions. And if for that first 2/3 of the book alone, I mean, read the whole book, obviously, but for just the beginning, I said he did a really good job of putting that together. And so if you've read Daniel Kahneman, if you've read Cialdini, if you've read Richard Thaler, and other behavioral economists, as I try to speak today. Here's a good summary and good reference points and easy read. And so I really recommend people pick that up and read it. It's a good book, and it's like a basic text, I think, that salespeople should have with them.
That sounds like a great one. Another one to add on the list. When I hop on an airplane, that's my best time. And given my status, I should be reading more than I'm doing. And I read pretty much.
Right. So, okay. You're saying that's another one you're going to add. Okay.
Yeah, so, that's definitely another one I want to, to add.
That read recently, which is becoming one of my all-time favorite books about sales, even though it's not specifically about selling, and I've mentioned before, it's called The Coaching Habit, written by a gentleman named Michael Bungay Stanier. And wow, what a good book, short book. What the book is really about is behavior change. And this is really essential for us as anybody involved in the business of sales management, and so on. The book really does a great job sort of describing sort of state of the art in terms of research of how habits are formed. And so when we think about our routine as salespeople, it's fundamentally habit driven. And so it gives a great foundation about how to develop new habits. And then when he talks about implementing his coaching habit, he has examples about how you should coach. And really, if you're going to be an effective coach, your takeaway from reading the book is, wow, an effective salesperson really is an effective coach. You're really coaching your prospects in a very specific way. And I would definitely recommend everybody run out and pick up a copy of that book.
That is, I'll probably listen to that one today.
Yeah.
Because it's short, right? It's a short one.
It is short, yeah. And this is Canadian-based, runs a consulting firm named Box of Crayons in Canada. But smart guy, excellent book. So it's another one people should add to their list.
Well, and especially, Andy, since we've talked about how there's so much leverage in frontline managers and what they do and how well they're trained, that just the more that we can either equip managers, if we're in a position to do that, or if we are frontline managers, that we continue to develop our own skills, the more impact that's going to have, on our success.
Right.
So I'm excited about that one. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm trying to think what else I read recently another book, a short book. A lot of books out there about how to use LinkedIn to sell. And I've had a number of people on the show talking about their books and talking about the work they do, and lots of excellent people talking about it. But I read a book about LinkedIn that came from sort of an unexpected source. So a gentleman named Eric Qualman, who's a very well-known speaker, consultant, primarily on the marketing side, does a lot of work with enterprise, major Fortune 500 type companies. Very interesting guy if you go and look at his website. But he wrote this book about how to sell on LinkedIn, 30 tips in 30 days. Actually,
is that a hack?
Actually, it's not, and it's
Okay.
it is
checking.
good basic behaviors.
For those people who've listened to a previous episode where we talk about hacks.
Yeah, no, it's talking about just good basic selling behavior, and how you basically implement that and exemplify that through LinkedIn. And really one of the better books on the topic that I've read.
Okay, there's. I'd be curious to get that one. I know that more and more people. I mean, we're using it more and more at Logs.io. I've used it in my previous companies, but that's becoming, at least in the U.S. Internationally, LinkedIn is not as big yet, so it's not as powerful of a tool for like my EMEA team, but definitely for the U.S., it's definitely a great tool, and everybody should know how to use that effectively.
Yeah. Well, this becomes a great book for that. Gosh, I wish I was just sitting here looking at the clock because I know we're going to wrap up here shortly. Now, on the non-business side.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a good number of books, by the way.
It is.
I think that can be an overwhelm for people. But on the non-business side, you were going to say?
On the non-business side, last suggestion of the day. Yeah, I love historical fiction.
Me too.
And so one of my favorite authors is Bernard Cornwell, who's written a number of series about... he wrote a great series I love called the Sharp series about this rifleman in the British Army in the Napoleonic era that basically has all the adventures and over a series of, 15, 20 books, rises up to a higher level.
Do you know what's so funny? When you told me it's historical fiction, I was going to ask, is this about war? Is like there a war theme in here? Is this one of the wars that you love to follow?
Well, gosh. But anyway, what I was going to say, you'll have to determine is he wrote a 10-book series called the Saxon Tale series about a fictional warrior in 9th century England. And this is all about sort of during the period of King Alfred, and when England was really 3 or 4 different countries at that point in time. That the names don't exist today except for Wales, and basically talking about sort of sets the stage for what ultimately becomes sort of the unification of England, and it's sort of in advance of the Norman conquest. But it I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of bloody, but it's a great sort of multi-generational story that I enjoyed.
I'm going to check it out. I don't typically go for the bloody books, even if they're historical fiction. But if it's really well written and I love history, then I'm in. I'm game. I'm going to explore it.
Yeah, you should read the first one. I mean, it's to me, he's such a great writer, and gosh, writes, I think, effortlessly, and great detail. Obviously, has a great team of researchers that help him, get everything ready to write. But great plots, easy to good quick reads, and you learn a lot in the process as well. So,
which I love.
Yeah. All right. So unless you have another one, do you have another one, or are we done?
I think that's good for today. I've always got more, but I also want to be mindful of our time today, and also not to overload.
True.
Not to overload.
Yes, the book reports won't be due next week, but we'll let you know.
Well,
exactly
not next week, but the following week. So 4 or 5 books in a couple of weeks. I think that's reasonable.
Just turn off the TV. You got plenty of time.
That's right.
as mom and dad say, turn off that TV.
I know, that's horrible.
Do
we
your
should
homework.
Stop this. We should stop this.
All right. Well, Bridget, as always, a pleasure to
As
speak
always,
with you.
Andy, it was great. I look forward to next time.
Next week. And friends, thank you again for joining us. Make sure you come back next week, listen to us, or in the meantime, listen to episode of Accelerate during the week, as we've got episodes, 6 days a week. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, good selling, everyone.
Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.